Welcome to today's Explainer, everyone. I am so incredibly glad you're here. Today, we're diving into something super fascinating because, well, it deals with something we all face but rarely actually understand completely, and that is ourselves. More specifically, we're going to explore how sudden life pivots and deeply felt failures actually shape us into having highly flexible, adaptable personalities. We're going to literally map out the exact journey from a totally shattered dream all the way to a completely rebuilt identity. To start us off, I want you to really think about this for a second. Why do we sometimes feel like entirely different people depending on the day or, even the hour? Have you ever noticed yourself acting completely out of character and just thought, wait, where did that come from? Well, this unpredictability isn't just random. As we'll see today, it's often a direct result of our past, our traumas, and the brilliant ways our minds adapt just to survive. Okay, let's jump right into section 1. The complexity of identity. So, a lot of us experience this sort of mental tug of war. On one hand, you've got the reserved introvert, right? Hesitant to interact, overthinking absolutely every single social move. But then, as soon as the right person comes along, boom, you're a total social extrovert. The author of our source material highlights this exact internal contradiction. Our minds are just constantly intermingling these identities. But why? Well, a continuous string of failures or abruptly changed circumstances in our past can actually wire us to constantly shift our personalities. It acts as a kind of defense mechanism. Think of your passion as a driving force. When you have this massive passion, like a singular guiding star in your life, it makes you incredibly strong internally. You completely ignore the external noise. But if you're suddenly unable to chase that dream, the mind just shatters. The author notes that expecting your personality to just snap back to its normal mode after an event like that, it's literally as impossible as blooming a dead flower. You are permanently altered. Moving on to section 2, a shattered lifelong dream. Imagine you're a pre-medical student. You've achieved stellar A1 grades, and you have this unyielding passion to become a doctor. But then comes the intense pressure of a final life-defining medical exam, and an absolute nightmare scenario unfolds. The bell rings to begin, and suddenly you realize your mandatory admit card is missing from your bag. Panic sets in instantly. The student rushes to the gate, literally pleading with strangers for just a 1-minute phone call to their parents. Everyone refuses. With the clock ticking down on their entire future, they have to jump into a rickshaw, speed all the way back home, grab the card, and frantically rush back to the exam hall. And here is the agonizing reality of that chaotic morning. Despite doing everything physically possible to race home and back, the student finally sat down to take this monumental exam exactly 20 minutes late. With a completely broken heart, but still pushing through with this desperate, panicked passion, they somehow managed to finish the paper. But the trauma of that day definitely didn't end when the exam was handed in. Just look at this number, 6. That is the excruciating number of months the student had to just sit and wait in agonizing suspense for the exam results to finally arrive. I mean, imagine half a year of wondering if a single morning's mistake ruined your entire life's ambition. And then the results arrived. Second division marks. This meant the score was far, far too low to continue in medicine. People tried to be supportive, saying things like, well, at least you didn't fail the year. But for a student whose entire identity was totally wrapped up in becoming a doctor, those low marks were basically a death sentence to their lifelong dream. All that passion and enthusiasm, instantly extinguished. Which brings us to section 3, picking up broken pieces. When a dream dies, it doesn't just quietly fade away. It shatters like glass directly on top of you. Your immediate reaction is that piecing it back together to look the way it used to is totally impossible. And frankly, it is. But the task isn't to recreate the past, is it? The real task is finding the courage to pick up those sharp, broken pieces and build something entirely new out of them. The very first step in that recovery process is beautifully anchored in this wisdom from William Faulkner. We have to start teaching ourselves not to be afraid. When your world collapses, fear is just the default state. Overcoming that paralyzing fear of failure and the fear of the unknown, it's the absolute prerequisite for moving forward. And building directly upon Faulkner, the source brings in Nelson Mandela's perspective to redefine what it actually takes to survive. Courage isn't about not feeling afraid after a massive failure. I mean, of course you're afraid. Courage is the triumph over that fear. It's stepping back into the ring right after you've just been knocked out cold. It is the active daily choice to reinvent yourself, despite the absolute terror of failing again. So how did the author actually apply this courage? Well, they made an incredible pivot. They completely shifted away from medicine. First, they went after a bachelor's degree in commerce, dedicating themselves to it fully. Then, they shifted again, earning a master's in English literature. They took that shattered pre-med identity and channeled all their relentless zeal into entirely new disciplines. And that proved that their drive to succeed wasn't just tied to medicine, it was tied to their own internal resilience. All right, let's head into our final section, Section 4, the art of acceptance.
Surviving these profound life changes ultimately creates a super unique, highly flexible personality. Remember that unpredictable, fluctuating identity we discussed at the very beginning of this explainer? The one bouncing between introverted and extroverted? Well, the author realizes that this isn't a flaw at all. Being unpredictable, humorous, and jolly is actually the healthy result of absorbing life's harshest lessons. It's just the mind's way of staying loose, adaptable, and ready for whatever curveballs come next. Mostly because it already knows for sure it can survive the worst.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s words perfectly encapsulate the author's journey here. Losing the medical dream was a massive, crushing disappointment. But it was finite. It was one event. The true lesson here is learning to accept that finite disappointment while maintaining a relentless, infinite hope for the future. That right there is the true engine of adaptability. Through this whole journey of shattered dreams and radical pivots, going from medicine to commerce to literature, the author arrived at a really deep, profound sense of contentment. They realized that true peace actually comes from trusting that every phase of life, even the absolute darkest and most traumatic, serves a fruitful purpose. The trauma of the lost medical degree was basically just the catalyst needed to build a much stronger, far more dynamic person. We always hear the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none, used as a bit of an insult, right? Usually by people who've only ever tried one thing. But the author challenges this entirely. Why can't we be a flexible jack who adapts to whatever new reality we face, while still applying the art of mastery to every single new level? You don't have to just be a doctor. You can master commerce and then turn right around and master literature. Flexibility is absolutely a superpower, not a weakness. So the crucial point I really want you to take away from this explainer today is this. True resilience is not about perfectly executing your original life plan. It is about building a personality that is flexible enough to accept life's unexpected and sometimes pretty brutal changes. It's about letting the glass shatter and actually having the courage to build a beautiful new mosaic out of all those pieces. Which leaves us here. I want you to think about your own life, your own goals, and your own identity. When your original dream shatters, and let's be real, for many of us at some point it will, how will you bend to master your new reality? Will you let it break you permanently, or will you use it to become more flexible, more resilient, and more brilliantly unpredictable? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. I really hope it gave you some powerful tools to view your own journey in a totally new light.